Lechi lach to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lechi lach, on your journey I will bless.
So welcome all the old comers and newcomers. As Steve said, I should introduce myself since we have newcomers. And so my name is Julia Newman. I remade myself, so now you can see it in English. I'm of Russian origins. I live in Israel since I'm 7 years old. I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, as some of you heard a week ago, but that's a different story. I'm a tour guide for the last 20 years. I worked for VFI plus archaeology, whatever, for many years. And I also guide families, private groups, Christians, Jews, Russians, Americans, whatever, all over Israel. I love it. I also worked for Kinneret Academic College as a supervisor and coordinator of a tour guide course. I have my master's degree in Land of Israel Studies from Haifa University. And I'm doing this, meaning the Zoom tours and presentations for the last 7 months or so. So, and that's of course thanks to Steve and Ilana, without whom that would never happen. It started as almost a joke, and here we are months later, still on our way for new sites and new presentations. And you're always welcome to join us. I would also like to remind that this is a pay as you wish thing, so you're welcome to donate. And here we start.
I will say one other thing. Julia mentioned VFI. If you're new here and you don't know what it is, it is Volunteers for Israel. We're the only organization in America that facilitates civilian volunteer work on Israeli Defense Force bases based on their need.
Okay. Well, Steve, what I really need you to do is to make me a co-host, because otherwise I cannot share my screen, and I definitely need to do that. So, because otherwise you will see only my background, which is great, but not enough.
Sorry, I thought we did that already.
Yeah, well, I really need to be a co-host. So as you do that, I have two things to tell you. One is that, as I said before, I just finished watching a wonderful Zoom presentation by Dr. Collins about Sodom. I thought that there will be like hundreds of people watching because it's such an amazing site, such a famous story. And that was only 50 of us. Well, already here we have 97 participants. I'm not Dr. Collins. I'm not talking about Sodom, and that's because of Steve and Ilana and all of you. So thank you. And the second thing, a few days ago, I was booked by an American group of tourists for the first time since the beginning of COVID. Yes. So this is the very first group, which is expected to arrive, God willing, in the end of July. Okay. So I really hope that you guys will make it before they do, because end of July is hot. So I would recommend that you make it in 2 months, maybe. All right. So as soon as possible. Well, now I'm supposed to be able to share my screen. Okay. So okay. Guys, can you see the wanderings of Sanhedrin from Usha to Shefaram? Yes. Okay. Oh my God. Now I can see that I have a spelling mistake. It's not wanderings. It's wanderings in terms of, moving from place to place. Okay. I apologize. I did not. I didn't see it before. Okay. Anyhow, sorry. Yes, wanderings, but no. Okay, so let's start walking, following the footsteps of the Sanhedrin. Forget it. Sorry. All right. So before we start walking and talking, let's just make sure that we know what a Sanhedrin is, okay? So Sanhedrin is, well, it existed starting from about 24 centuries ago during the Second Temple period. And Sanhedrin or Sanhedrion is a Greek word which means gathering or assembly, which is basically similar as Knesset, okay? People sitting together and talking and making decisions. There were hundreds of members of the Sanhedrin, and then they would sit down and make decisions upon different important things connected to Judaism. Now, according to the definition, according to the description in the Talmud, not everybody can be a member of a Sanhedrin, but those with wisdom, with appearance, with stature, with old age, with sorcery. Okay, this is interesting because theoretically speaking, we're not supposed to deal with sorcery being Jewish, right? But this is from the Talmud. And again, we're not studying Talmud, just look at it. And know 70 languages that the Sanhedrin should not hear from an interpreter, which is very important because, as you know, things are lost in translation. Yeah, all right. So there were hundreds of members of the Sanhedrin, but they would not gather all together each time, okay? It depends on the topic how many members of the Sanhedrin would gather together. The minimum would be 3. The maximum at one seat at one occasion would be 71, all right? And it must be an odd number, of course. So when they vote for something, you know, there will be a decision, unlike what we have in our politics. So the Sanhedrin existed starting from the Second Temple period up until it was canceled by the Byzantine rulers around 400 AD in Tiberias, which means that for the last, 16 centuries, we do not have Sanhedrin. And this is one of the difficulties. This is one of the reasons why we have so many disagreements and so many arguments and so many troubles within the Jewish world, because we don't have, you know, a committee, a gathering of people who would definitely decide upon something for every single Jew. We did have some attempt of renewing the Sanhedrin, but this is a different story. Okay, so after we know what Sanhedrin is and who should be in his Sanhedrin, now the wanderings, okay, now I got it right, of Sanhedrin. We read in the Talmud, okay, that the Sanhedrin exiled from the Gazit bureau. Gazit is a certain part of the temple, okay, to a store, and then from a store to Jerusalem, some location in Jerusalem which is not specified, and then from Jerusalem to Yavne. Well, Yavne is not on my map. Yavne is located a bit south of Tel Aviv, all right? And then after the Bar Kokhba revolt, meaning after 135 AD, they moved to Usha. Okay, and this is where we're gonna start our tour today, the first location of the Sanhedrin. And Usha is up here. You see this big yellow golden star. This is Usha, and this is where I am now on my back screen. All right, and from Usha, it moved to Shefaram, and Shefaram is here on my map. This smaller, you see, it's not far away. We're going to walk only for a few hours. Okay, don't worry, no big deal. And then the beautiful walk. We will be walking from Usha to Shefaram, following the footsteps of the Sanhedrin, and then the Sanhedrin moved from Shefaram to Beit She'arim, and Beit She'arim is down here. You see this big red star here, and then from Beit She'arim it moved to Tzipori, which is here, and then from Tzipori it moved to Tiberias. Most of you know Tiberias, right on the beach, the only town by the lake, okay, here in the corner, and then it was canceled. That's where Sanhedrin finished its existence. All right, so we will be following the footsteps of the Sanhedrin from Usha to Shefaram, and some other time we will be visiting Beit She'arim, and we will be visiting Tzipori, which is most famous because of its mosaics. It's just amazing, like open air mosaic museum it's amazing. Okay, we're gonna be there later. And then it moved to Tiberias. So we will be following not just the footsteps of the Sanhedrin, but we will be also walking something which is called the Sanhedrin Trail. Okay, we have quite a few hiking trails with different topics, with different ideas, you know, along Israel. The most famous by far is the so-called Trail of Israel. Okay, Shvil Israel, which goes all the way from Dan up north next to the Lebanese border. It goes all the way to the south to the Israeli-Egyptian border, a bit south of Eilat. Ilana, you do like that, which means that you're familiar with the trail. Okay, this is the most famous by far. It's like 900 kilometers long, and this is like the Appalachian Trail, or you know, stuff like that. But in addition to that, we have all sorts of trails which are focused on a subject. Okay, it goes from here to here because something happened in between. So we have the Jesus Trail, we have the Gospel Trail, we have the Golan Trail, we have Menashe Trail, okay, in my area where I live. And back in 2017, this gentleman, you see him on the right here, Dr. Chagai Amtsur, he came up with an idea that we need a Sanhedrin Trail. You know, the Sanhedrin moved from one place to other, so let's follow the Sanhedrin. And then there was a long story, and to make the long story short, here we are with the Sanhedrin Trail, which is here on this map. If you want to hike the Sanhedrin Trail in reality, okay, in like 2 months from now, it is possible. They have an interactive map, they have a website, they have everything, you know, and then you don't start hiking from Usha because of geographical locations. You start from Beit Shearim down south, and then you hike up north, and then to the east, and all the way to Tiberias. And along the way, you have these marks. You see here at the lower left corner, these are the marks of the Sanhedrin Trail. And the green color symbolizes Mount Carmel. Okay, the green color of evergreen Mount Carmel, because it starts from the west, all right? And then the red color, well, it is red, but actually it's supposed to be purple, okay? It's just easier to make it red. So the purple color symbolizes the royal color and the color of the priesthood. And then the blue color symbolizes the Sea of Galilee, which is actually a lake. And therefore, you walk from west to east, following Sanhedrin, and as you look at the mark, you know which direction you are actually facing. All right, great. And then, since you're supposed not just to walk but also to learn, so along the trail we have these stones that you see, and each stone has this inscription. It says Shvil HaSanhedrin, the path of Sanhedrin, and then we have different quotas from the Talmud or the Mishnah, all right? And then you walk, talk, read, and learn. That's a beautiful idea. Now, the idea was to make this trail ready for 2018, because it was supposed to be made for the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. And that's because there were 71 members of Sanhedrin, and it was supposed to be 70 kilometers long. Now, that was the idea. They did not make it by 2018, and actually it's not 70 kilometers long, but rather 120 kilometers long. Why is that? Well, because as they started marking the path, they said, oh, actually, there is something interesting here. And, oh, we must visit this side. And actually, we would like to walk here, but this is a private property, and the guy doesn't want us to walk through his private property. And they ended up with 120 kilometers of the Sanhedrin Trail. But anyhow, Dr. Chagai Amtsur is very happy. So now that's about time for us to make it to Usha, and the location of ancient Usha, this first location of Sanhedrin in the Galilee, is right in this forest. We are located next to Kiryat Ata, which is a town a bit north of Haifa. and this forest was planted by J and F. So all of you who donated money for J and F Forest, so you might have been donating for this forest. So thank you. And welcome to Usha, where it all began, okay? If you've been to Israel, if you've been to the city of David, so you know they have this beautiful film, this 3D film, and then they say, here it all began, because this is the first capital of King David. But when you visit Shiloh, as we did a week ago, so they tell you this is where it all began, because in Shiloh, the Ark of Covenant used to stay before Jerusalem, right? And when you go to Usha, they tell you, no, this is where it all began, because when the Sanhedrin made it to Usha, they understood that they actually have to start writing down all the ideas and commandments and traditions and behaviors and rules, which are the oral Torah. Because if you think of it, present-day Judaism is definitely based upon Torah, is definitely based upon the Bible. But in order to know how exactly you should behave, the Bible is not enough. You need the Mishnah, you need the Talmud, you need the Shulchan Aruch, you need all these rabbinical explanations and understandings, okay? Now, that was the oral Torah up until after Bar Kokhba revolt, because during the Bar Kokhba revolt, we had about 500,000 dead and about 300,000 prisoners of war. And then when Sanhedrin made it to Usha, the chief rabbi at the time, he said, we have to gather together and we have to start writing down the information we have. And they started writing down, and eventually this writing was assembled into the Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah was not assembled in Usha. It happened later. So the Mishnah was assembled in Tzipori, this beautiful place with the beautiful mosaics we're going to visit some other time, okay? But the writing of the Mishnah started here in Usha. And therefore, if you're an observant Jew, or even if you're not observant Jew, but you just put a mezuzah on your door, okay? So you put a mezuzah on your door because these guys in Usha told you so, okay? You never thought of it, but this is where the actual behavior, the actual tradition comes from. So that's where it all began. This is the significance of Usha. Ilana, I can see you are impressed. Thank you. And this is what I'm actually trying to do here. You know, I'm trying to explain how important this place is, and you've never ever been there. We should fix it. So, it is a hill. It is a small, flat hill, you know, with a flat top with beautiful trees. Yeah, I want you to take a look at it. Okay, here we are. We will be joining for a few seconds a group of tour guides. Okay, that was a tour for tour guides, which I joined, and then, you know, I used it to prepare our tour today. You can see these trees, and you see that these trees are old. This is something we will be talking about a bit later. You can see some of the archaeological excavations. You can see the blue and white flag of the Israeli Antiquity Authority. And you can see a big tree here. We will be back to this tree because that tree has an amazing history, which has nothing to do with the Talmud. So we have some oak and pistachio trees. And Sabar, this, you know, this most famous cactus, Sabar or Sabres, as it is called, which is always to be found around what? Around old Arab towns, okay? Every single Arab town, or better to say, every single Arab village, Arab farming community, will be putting sabres because they have this impossible spikes and nobody would like to touch such a natural fence, and then they will always have it around. So if you see a big group of old sabres, you know this used to be an Arab village. all right? And this is no exception. So yes, indeed, we know that there was an Arab village which was called Hosha, okay, which existed up until 1948, up until the Independence War. All right, now let's talk a little bit about these trees. You see, these are the same trees we saw before, and these are the same cactuses we saw before. Okay, that's nice. Now, the people of Hosha, okay, Arab Muslim farmers, settled on this hill, and they called it Hosha. All right, this village was established back in 1880, and this is very interesting because prior to 1880, there was no village there. So when these people came, and actually these particular Arabs who established the village, they came from Egypt. All right, Egyptian Muslim Arabs came over here, okay, political reasons, whatever, and they established a community. They called the community Hosha. Okay, that sounds a little bit like Usha. Actually, it sounds more like, not just a little bit, it's almost the same. Why? Good question. All right, so these are the trees of Hosha. And the more amazing, you see this gentleman here, his name is Victor Guérin. Okay, he is a French scholar, French historian and geographer who toured the land of Israel in mid-19th century, okay, before the village of Hosha was built. And he describes that hill, and he describes that he saw some ruins there. And he also mentions that he was told by his tour guide that that used to be a Jewish town in the ancient times. Interesting, okay? Even more interesting, you see, unfortunately, I don't have his photo because he passed away about 100 years prior to Victor Guérin. So we are talking about mid-18th century, Rabbi Chaim ben Attar, a great rabbi who came to the land of Israel in mid-18th century. This is his tomb on Mount of Olives. And he says that he was taken by his tour guide to a little hill, and the tour guide, the Muslim tour guide, told him that that used to be the place where Sanhedrin used to stay. So you see, we have this amazing continuity of tradition. And then when the archaeologists first came to this hill of Hosha, and they noticed something very interesting. There are no Arab houses on the hill itself. I mean, in between these trees, nobody lived, nothing. I mean, the village was all around on the footsteps, and the very convenient flat top of the hill was untouched, and it was only surrounded by the trees we see here, all right? So they started looking for somebody old enough to live in that village before 1948 to ask him a question. Hey, why didn't you build your house up here? This is much more convenient. And eventually they found an old lady living in Shefaram. And that old lady, who used to be a resident of Hosha, she said, well, we did not build our houses up there because we knew that this is a holy place. Okay, she could not tell what type of holy place or holy for whom, but that was just a tradition of the place. This is a holy place, and therefore you don't build your house on top of it. The bottom line is that this must be Usha of Sanhedrin. Okay, we have a modern kibbutz, by the way, not far away, called Usha, exactly the same name, but this is not the same location. So if you want to visit Usha, you want to make sure that you're not going to the kibbutz, you're going to ancient archaeological site of Usha. Okay, when you just do the Google, make sure. All right, in Usha, 14 different regulations were issued. And just to mention a few of them, you see, these are, I would say these are the most important because these are the most, I don't know, something which really has to do with our daily life today. These phrases, if you don't read Hebrew, up here, this is from the Mishnah. And it says no prisoners are released in smuggling operation. And it also says that the price of prisoners will be reasonable and not excessive. Okay, this is very interesting because if you recall the exchange with the terrorists when we gave 1,047 prisoners for Gilad Shalit, our imprisoned soldier. If you remember this event, quite a few Orthodox people said that we should not do that because you see in Usha they said the price for prisoners will be reasonable and not excessive. And other Orthodox people said, but it is the duty of the leaders to take care of the release of the prisoners captured in battle. All right, so what should we do? Eventually, as you know, he was released. And another something, every occupation honors its owner, and it is important that the person earns a living. All right, this is very important. This is from the Talmud. This is written down here in Hebrew. Oops, sorry. גדולה מלאכה ומכבדת את בעליה. And this is something which looks like a contradiction to the behavior of quite a few ultra-Orthodox people in Israel and overseas. I mean, as you know, they don't work. They only study and pray, and they're paid for that. And so where is the occupation? And their answer is, our occupation is studying Torah. All right? In Hebrew, it is called Toroto Umanuto. And again, I'm not getting any deeper into it, but you see how much these Usha regulations, which were written down, 18 centuries ago, they still actually have great impact on our daily life and your daily life as well, because you donate money, because you see one should live in Eretz Israel and not abroad. And since you do live abroad, so you pay money so other Jews can live in Eretz Israel. Things are connected to Usha. All right. Some archaeological excavations. This is the same menorah you see behind me. This menorah is actually a Chanukiah, okay, with the 9 candles. And this is the working one, uses electricity, but this is the working one at every Hanukkah. The municipality of Kiryat Ata light the candles, and we have a Chanukiah lid on top of the archaeological site of Usha, overlooking this Mount. Okay, now we are facing southwest, and this is Mount Carmel. Well, in Usha, since people had to work and make a living, so they mostly made olive oil and wine. Okay, so what we see here is part of an olive press. This is the crushing stone full of water, just because we had rain 2 days ago. Otherwise, it would be full of crushed or half-crushed olives. And these are the weights which we use to squeeze the olive oil from the olives. And, well, we have hundreds, maybe even thousands of oil presses all over Israel. I mean, this is great, but these are no news. But this olive press is actually special, and that's because, okay, on the right-hand side, right next to this press, we have this structure. Okay, I hope you can see the stairs, and I hope you can see some water down there. Okay, and you can see that it is plaster, so it is some sort of a water reservoir. This is a mikveh. Now, in a Jewish town, village, you will definitely find a mikveh. Again, this is something to be expected. But you don't normally place a mikveh right next to an olive press. You don't normally do that, okay? You either make a living or you dip yourself in a mikveh. But here in Usha, we have the mikveh inside the industrial complex. And, well, it is a fact, okay? Now, you don't necessarily agree with the explanation, but it is a fact. Now, the explanation is that since in Usha, this is where the Sanhedrin used to be, and this is where the greatest rabbis of the time used to be, they wanted to make the olive oil in purity. And we actually read in the Talmud that up until the 4th century, meaning almost 300 years after the destruction of the temple, the people of Usha still believe that the temple will be rebuilt soon, okay? They will be the witnesses of the temple being rebuilt, and therefore they prepare their olive oil in purity, so they will have that olive oil ready for the temple whenever it will be rebuilt. It never happened, as we know, but I think it's quite amazing to see, to read the Talmud and to be in Usha and to see the olive press with the mikveh inside. This is a wine press, okay? On this mosaic floor, you put the grapes, and then you just step on them, you jump, you dance, and then you have the wine, not the wine, sorry, the grape juice pouring into these 2 reservoirs. This is one of them, again, stiff, and this is the second one, again, with stiff and mosaic, okay? Now, you might ask yourself, or you might ask myself, how do we know that this is not a mikveh? Okay, that could have been a mikveh. I mean, this is basically a water reservoir, big enough, nice enough. Well, forget these stones. Of course, it was nice and clear. Why this is not a mikveh? All right. Well, actually, I've mentioned it already when we follow the footsteps of Yeshua in Nazareth. And the answer is that in a mikveh, never ever you will put mosaic on the floor. Because if you put mosaic, a little bit of dirt, a little bit of dust, and it will penetrate in these cracks in between the mosaic stones, and then the mikveh will be ruined. There's no way you can keep it clear and clean and pure enough. And therefore, if you see mosaic floor in a water reservoir, this is not a mikveh. And this is not a mikveh indeed. This is part of a wine press. And there is another mikveh nearby. This is a mikveh indeed. And well, let's take another look. This is the same Chanukia behind me. These houses belong to modern Kiryat Ata, okay, one of the Krayot between Haifa and Akko. And then as far as we can see, this is the Carmel Mound and Haifa University. I mean, I could see it, but now I don't think you can see it, but you will believe me that that's where Haifa University is located. And just before we move on, I want you to look at this track. Can you see that, this concrete track on the road? Okay, well, okay. The track itself is not really important. What I want you to see is the road. Okay, this is modern road number 22, which goes from Haifa and surrounds the Krayot and goes directly into Akko. All right. The reason why I want you to look at this road is because just about a mile, okay, north from here, there is a big junction which is called Somech. Okay, later. Now let's look at this tree. This is a big, massive, beautiful oak tree, the one we saw before. Now we're sitting underneath this beautiful tree. And that tree has an amazing story to it. So the story goes like that. You see this young, handsome gentleman. His name was Zohar. He was better known by his nickname Zorik. And his last name was Dayan. Now, Zorik Dayan was a younger brother of his famous older brother. You all recognize him. This is Moshe Dayan, of course. Yeah, no way you can mistake him. And Zorik Dayan, young brother, was killed in a battle which took place during the Independence War next to Kibbutz Ramat Yochanan, which is a bit west from us now. He was killed in a battle, and 4 days after he was killed, the Druze forces who participated in this battle against the Jewish forces they decided to switch sides. The Druze decided, from now on, we will not support the Arabs in the war. We will support the Jews in the war. Probably because they realized, who is going to win the war. And therefore, the meeting, the shake hands, the peace agreement back in April 14, 1948, about just a month before the declaration of the independence of the State of Israel. This peace agreement, which lasts up until today between the Jews and the Druze, this shaking hands took place right here under this tree, in between Shefaram and Ramat Yochanan, where Zorik was killed. From the Jewish side, the representative of IDF, the representative of the Jewish forces, was Moshe Dayan himself. And he shook hands with Kabbalan, who was the representative of the Druze forces, the Druze enemies, which became part of the people of Israel. And starting from that moment and up until today, and probably forever, the Druze serve in the Israeli army, and they even have compulsory military service, just like the Jews. And the whole thing started right here under this particular tree. Unfortunately, they did not take a photo, so I cannot show you the photo. But use your imagination. Young Moshe Dayan, who lost his brother 4 days before he shook hands with the commander of the forces, which killed his brother. But, he probably realized that how important it's going to be for the next generations. And there is another wine press here, just outside of the top of the hill, and more stairs. And, let's walk. Okay, now we will start walking towards Shefaram. Every now and then, when it is really important, you will see these signs. Okay, it says Churbat Usha, the ruins of Usha, and here it says Even HaShabbat, the stone of the Shabbat stone. And we were walking through this very convenient, very comfortable path in this beautiful J&F forest with some pine trees, some oak trees, some cypress trees, beautiful flowers. Spring in Israel is the best time for hiking, and generally speaking, being here, it's so peaceful and beautiful, and birds, and sometimes bikes and sometimes motorbikes. But just great. Spring in Israel is the best, as I said. So, walking like 10 minutes, we could see irises, we could see wild garlic, and anemones, of course, and cyclamen, and the marks. Remember these marks I showed you before, and another mark, and here we are. We made it to this big sign which says Even Tchum Shabbat, the stone of the Shabbat region. That's what it looks like. It actually a stone on the ground with Greek inscription on it. I do not read Greek, but the archaeologists believe that it says Shabbat border or Shabbat region. And as we know, according to the rabbinical tradition, you should not leave your town, actually your house, for more than 1.2 kilometers, which is approximately a bit less than 1 mile. Okay, this is the Tchum Shabbat, the area of Shabbat. And if you order that, you'll never walk beyond it. So it's quite amazing. Up until today, we found 2 Shabbat stones only. Okay, one is next to Usha and the other one is next to Timrat. That's it. But probably every single Jewish town would have a Shabbat stone. So after the Shabbat stone, we keep walking. This is a beautiful field of wheat, and we're walking towards Shefaram, which is our next destination. You can already see it here today. It's a big Arab Druze town. No Jews live there, but back then, in the times of Sanhedrin, that was a Jewish So we're on our way. We will not be passing the Somer Junction, but if you want to drive to Shefaram today, so you will be passing this Somer Junction, which, I mentioned before. That's what it looks like. Not pretty, not beautiful, not at all. But it is very important because this Somer Junction takes us to our next destination, which is already within Shefaram. Okay, now you see we're approaching the houses of Shefaram, the last mark on the last rock. And now, here we are. We are in Shefaram, and we made it to, a moment of Hebrew. If you read Hebrew, you can read Beit HaKnesset, right? Okay. But then, you cannot say Beit HaKnesset Orochim. It's not proper Hebrew. So it's not Beit Knesset. It's Beit HaKnesset Orochim, meaning the house where you welcome the guests, where you let the guests enter, and it's dedicated to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, and of course, great rabbi. We have candles which we can light here, the Neshama candles, and this is what the tomb. I mean, it's being rebuilt right now. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava HaSomech, the rabbi who tried to keep the ordination, the smicha, for Sanhedrin after it was forbidden by the Romans. The Romans, after the Bar Kokhba revolt, they realized that if they want to get rid of these Jews, if they want to get rid of this rabbinical leadership, they have to cut the chain, because only a member of Sanhedrin can make the ordination of the next member. Okay, it must pass from one person to another person by touch. Okay. If you are a member of Sanhedrin, you have to touch somebody in order for him to become a member of Sanhedrin. And so if you cancel this, so you will not have this rabbinical chain of leaders. All right. And so the Romans totally forbade it. And they said that whoever will do the smicha will be killed. Whoever will be nismach, he will be killed. And the town will be ruined. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, he stood in between two hills, in between two towns, in between two regions, and he did the smicha of 5 disciples. And the Romans saw him as he did it, and he was killed. The students, they ran away though. And so this is believed to be the specific location of the smicha, and it's right next to this junction we saw before. And this is his tomb, okay, underground burial, typical burial cave, typical to the 2nd century AD, exactly as it should be. So now we enter the cave, and this is what it looks like. It says Hatana. Hatana is a rabbi from the Mishnah period. Hatana Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. This is believed to be his tomb. These are some of his disciples. And holy books, of course, and another Ner Neshama. And, that was really amazing. All that I expected to see. But then when you look carefully, you see here on the left, there is a Ner Neshama, okay, in a box. And on its left-hand side, there is something written. So when I took a closer look at it, that's what I saw. Okay? This is a prayer to be saved from the horrors of the time, internet, etc. That's what it says. It is a specific prayer to be saved from an internet. So I don't think we should pray that, because otherwise, we will have no BFI education project. But as you know, for some ultra-Orthodox, an internet, a computer, TV is a total disaster. Yeah. All right. And then we move to the ancient Jewish cemetery of Shefaram. That's what it looks like. That's myself taking a photo of the cemetery. Okay, I was standing here taking a photo, and this is the result here. And this cemetery has to do with this great rabbi, Hagaon Mivilna, the Vilna genius, who brought his disciples. He never made it himself, but his disciples made a great aliyah in the very beginning of the 19th century. and they are buried in this Jewish graveyard. And I just love this photo because this is a graveyard which is not like, it is visited by tourists and Jews, but nobody is buried there for about 100 years. But it is very well kept, and a Muslim family which is responsible for the cemetery, a Druze family responsible for the cemetery, they planted these trees, and so you see these beautiful lemons and beautiful palm tree, and there is life in this place. And then we walk uphill. This is quite difficult. Shefaram is built on a hill, and you walk through a typical Arab, Muslim, and Christian and Druze town, and it's difficult to understand what actually do we do here along the Sanhedrin Trail. But eventually we make it here, and then we'll look at this ugly building. This is a very, very important one, so please pay attention. This is the house of Joffrey family, and then this is the view. Okay, we are looking north, and this is another part of the Lower Galilee. You can see the green dome of a central mosque, and all of a sudden we just take a look to the left, and that's what we see. Well, this is definitely a menorah, isn't it? This is a menorah, and then we take a look at this sign here, and it says Beit HaKnesset HaYehudi HaAtik Machaneh HaShechina, the ancient Jewish cemetery, which is called Machaneh HaShechina, the camp of Shechina, of the divine presence. Machaneh HaShechina is the Talmudic term to define the place of Sanhedrin. And just to remind us that it has to do with Judaism and altar and temple, you see this angle here. This is a horn, like the altar would have the 4 horns. That's one of them. And we saw a very similar horn a week ago in Shiloh. So now, we are fighting with this door. It's always locked, but you can always get a key. And then when you get a key, you cannot unlock the door, but eventually you do unlock the door. And that's what you see inside. This is Dr. Chagi Amsu, the one who invented the Sanhedrin Trail. And that's what this synagogue looks like. Now, this synagogue was renovated in 1988, but originally it was built back in 1740 on top of an older synagogue. Are we sure that this is where the Sanhedrin would gather? No, but this is the tradition. Now, see, this is a family photo of a former student of mine. Her name is Maggie Cohen. She's Jewish, of course. And this is her grandfather, okay? He looks like an Arab farmer, okay? He wears a jalabia. He looks 100% Arab Muslim, but he's 100% Orthodox Jew. And that's because Maggie's family belonged to a group of Jews which are known as Musta'arvim. It's a different topic for a different presentation, but I would just say that we have a small fraction of Jews who never, at least as far as they know, never left the land of Israel. I mean, they never experienced diaspora. Most of us left the land of Israel after the destruction of the temple or after Bar Kokhba revolt, and therefore we always speak of the diaspora of 2,000 years. But some Jews never left, or at least as far as we know. And these Jews lived within Arabs, among the Arabs, as Jews, but they looked Arab. They behaved Arab. They spoke Arabic. They were dressed like Arabs. And this is a very good example of such a Jew. Okay, they are originally from Ki'in. And this is what the community, the Jewish community of Shefaram, looked like. And then, back in 1770, Rabbi Chaim Abulafia II, okay, this is his tomb in Tiberias, this is his signature. He made an aliyah from Turkey on his way to Tiberias. If you ever been to Tiberias, so there is the central synagogue of Tiberias is dedicated to Chaim Abulafia because he was the one who renewed the Jewish community of Tiberias. And he wanted to renew the Jewish community in Tiberias because this is where Sanhedrin passed away. Now, on his way to Tiberias, he visited Shefaram, and he decided that the community of Shefaram needs to be supported. And so he left some of the families who made Aliyah with him in Shefaram. So we have this ancient Jewish community of Shefaram, which was supported by a newer Jewish community of Chaim Abulafia. And this community, back in 1770, built the synagogue we are sitting in now. Now we come to the sad part. You see, this is a Hanukkah because a few months ago during Hanukkah, there was a group of Jews who came to lit the Hanukkah candles in Shefaram synagogue. Then they just left the Hanukkah there. And this is the Holy Ark. Very simple. It does not really look holy, but this is the Holy Ark. And therefore, inside, you would expect to find what? A Torah scroll, right? So we open these doors, and this is what we see. We see an empty box. This is the empty box, which used to have the Torah scroll from 18th century. Where is it? Well, it's missing. Okay, let's get back for a sec to this. Okay, Joffrey family house. The Jewish community got smaller and smaller, as year passed, because most of them moved to Haifa. As Haifa grew bigger and more significant and more prosperous, more Jews moved to Haifa. All right, we can understand that. And the last two Jewish families who lived in Shefaram left back in 1929 during an Arab uprising. Now they lived next to the synagogue, and so they were good neighbors and good friends with the Joffrey family. So they left the keys for the synagogue with the Joffrey family, and they said, well, look, would you please keep the keys, and we will be back, And they never came back. Now, the keys stayed with the Joffrey family, and then back in 1936, there was a great Arab revolt, and then a group of Arabs was about to burn the synagogue with the Torah scroll inside. Now, the father of the Joffrey family said, on my dead body. He stood in front of the door and he said, you have to kill me if you want to burn the synagogue. And so he was not killed, and the synagogue stayed. And same happened during the Independence War. It was not the same person, but it was still the same family with the same idea, okay, to protect the synagogue no matter what. And they still hold the keys. Now, back in, not sure, about 20 years ago, a representative of the Ministry of Religious Affairs came to this family and he said, well, thank you for keeping the keys. I want to keep the keys myself. Okay, I'm Jewish. I'm the representative of the ministry. Would you please? And the father said, no. These keys were given to me to keep, and I'm going to keep it forever. Over my dead body, you are going to get the keys. And therefore, he kept the keys. A few years ago, another representative of the same ministry came over and he said, listen, you will have the keys, but I have to take the Torah scroll to check that it is okay, because, you know, it is from mid-18th century, and if a Torah scroll is damaged, so you cannot use it. And the synagogue was actually used by the descendants of the Shefaram community for celebrating bar mitzvahs. So in this case, he could say nothing. So the Torah scroll was taken by a representative of the ministry. And guess what? It never came back. It was never, ever returned. And so many people, Jewish people, I mean, were trying to trace the Torah scroll and bring it back. and it was lost. So now we have a synagogue, we have the keys, we have the box, we don't have a Torah scroll, which is sad, you know. The Torah scroll was safe with the Muslims, and then it was lost by the Jews. And then we walk just a little bit further, you know, because the Sanhedrin Trail connects not just places, not just stories, but also religions. So you see, we are walking to this mosque. It's called the Old Mosque. And right next to the mosque, there is this stone, just as we find all along the Sanhedrin Trail. But this time, there's no Hebrew here. I mean, it says Hamizgad Yashan, the Old Mosque, but the quota is in Arabic, and Arabic only. And this is from the Quran rather than Mishnah and Talmud, because we're standing by a mosque. And then we, you know, take another look around the corner. And this is obviously a church. And by the church, there is another stone, and it says Knesiat St. Peter and Paulus, Church of St. Peter and Paul. And then we have a quote from the New Testament in Arabic, because the local Christian community speaks Arabic, of course. And all we need to do from here is to get a cup of coffee and walk downhill towards Tripoli. So that will be some other time. So thank you for watching. That's the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoy the Sanhedrin Trail. And don't forget the mark. And thanks again.
Thank you as always.
Thank you, Larry. You are there. Well, yeah, I will take a sip of water and I will look at the chat. I saw that the chat was quite active this time, which is great. All right. So what do we have here? Let me look at the chat, and then, you know, as usual, you're welcome to keep writing on chat, and then later when we have no more questions on chat, so you can ask, just unmute yourself, you know. Okay. Let's see. Oh wow. Rabbi said that you're living in Japan. Wonderful. Okay, great, Rabbi. I see that you're in Japan and it's 4 a.m. Friday. Oh my God, I don't believe that you woke up to walk the Sanhedrin Trail. I appreciate it. Wow. Okay. Can you give us bigger perspective? I'm not sure, Jill, I'm not sure bigger perspective of what? Okay, Ilana, you hike part of the Israel Trail. Right.
By accident.
By accident.
Just to go through Ramat HaNadiv, so you wind up on the trail without meaning to be.
Okay. Well, it is true. Yep, Sabra is really the prickly pear cactus. Yeah, it's actually from Mexico, right? The big one in your yard. The fruits are delicious. Yeah, but you don't want to touch it. You should not. All right. Well, is there dispersed camping allowed like in Arizona? Yes, actually you can keep wherever you want as long as you are outside of natural reserve. If you are within a natural reserve, like official natural reserve, so there are special camping areas, and then you are supposed to camp in those only, otherwise you can be fined. But if it's not a natural reserve, so you can camp wherever you want, and you know, this is a private property, somebody could be mad, but okay. Ner Neshama is a Yahrzeit candle, right? Since Yahrzeit is Yiddish, and we don't use it, so I forgot to mention, yes, it's a Yahrzeit candle, yes. Are those lit at the time? Yes. I mean, as long as somebody, anyway, as long as somebody is there, and since Rabbi Yehuda ben Bavai is a great great rabbi, so there's always a candle, at least one, normally more than one, lit at all times. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they are. I mean, Ner Neshama is Ner Neshama. I mean, Neshama is a soul. So, as the idea is that when this candle is lit, so the soul of the tzaddik, the soul of the rabbi, is connected to our soul. So the more, the better. So in you know, if you go to let's say Baba Sali, okay, the tzaddik Baba Sali in Netivot, so you will see like hundreds of candles lit at all times, because everybody who will come to visit, you will lit a candle.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes. When I was in Israel back in '65, I visited a shul in Pekin, and you had a picture of a Bet Knesset with a menorah on top that reminded me of it.
You are so correct. I mean, you are absolutely right. Well, the thing is that the menorah you saw, the menorah I showed you now is in Shefaram, okay? And this one is a replica of the menorah in Pekin, which is amazing that it's amazing that you remember it so correctly. But yes, and the reason why is because the menorah in Pekin was not the menorah, of course, the synagogue. The synagogue in Pekin was restored and renewed by Yitzhak Ben Tzvi, the second president of the state of Israel, who was very much interested. He was almost obsessed by Jewish communities, which never left the land of Israel. So he renewed the synagogue in Pekin, which is the most famous location for such a community, you know, the Mustarvim community. And he was also the one who renovated the synagogue in Shefaram. And so he used exactly the same menorah. He actually made a replica of the menorah in Pekin for the synagogue in Shefaram. So yes, it sort of tells the same story. Thank you. Yeah. Well, Horace said there are ultra-Orthodox people who do work. Of course, definitely so. We even have ultra-Orthodox who serve in the army, and there is a special military program to enhance their future participation in the life of the state of Israel. And yes, and every year we have more and more Orthodox who do work, who do study, who make incredible, you know, startups and things. But in the same time, we have so many ultra-Orthodox who do not work. And it's not because they're lazy, but because as far as they understand their mission is to learn to pray. And if they will not do that, so the land of Israel, the people of Israel will not be able to exist. They will not be able to make it because God will not support them. And so their job, their occupation is pray and study. And again, I've heard it for so many times for so many people. So of course, it is not true for everybody, but it is true for these people who believe that they should not work. Okay. Great. How long does the walk take? Well, look, depends on how fit you are. You know, this is 120 kilometers, which is approximately 85 miles, right? So that's pretty much up to you. I mean, if you're real fit, so you can walk 25 to 30 kilometers per day. So that's, you know, 5 days maybe. But if you want to walk slower and you want to read every single stone and you want to make a coffee on the way, so it will take longer. But that's approximately 85 miles long. Thank you, Gail. Okay, I think somebody knows where the Torah scroll is. Well, I guess so. I mean, somebody took it, so probably that somebody knows where it is. But as far as, like, you know, scholars, Torah guides, descendants of Shefaram community, so many people were trying to locate the Torah scroll and they failed. So definitely somebody knows where it is, but we don't know where this somebody is. So the signs or markers are in Hebrew. Is it what? If this is done independently, is there English signage too? No. The Sanhedrin Trail is in Hebrew, except of the locations like what I showed you, where they are oriented towards the local Arab community, and then they are in Arabic. So no, unfortunately, there is no English. You have to use your Google Translate. Janet asked, how could the Torah go missing? What are the theories about who did it and why? Well, the theories are very, very simple. A representative of the Ministry of Interior took it, and he either keeps it for himself because it is such an amazing ancient Torah scroll, or maybe he sold it for a lot of money, or maybe he donated it to some ultra-Orthodox synagogue he wanted to make happy. Like, definitely, it was not forgotten. Nobody threw it away. Somebody just used it. Which is, again, it's so unfair. Okay, well, there is a question which is privately to me, but I will answer everybody. Do you take people on Sanhedrin Trail for tours? Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, that's upon request. And we don't, like, I never hike the whole trail like at once, you know, I never walk the whole week or so. But since it is located basically between Haifa to Tiberias, so it's very convenient to hike just part of it. And then go home, and you can always get a cab or somebody will pick you up, you know. So anyhow, I never walked the whole thing, like, but you walk parts of it, and it is beautiful. It's fascinating, both in terms of nature and communities and sites you visit and people. It's just great. Okay, Laura, I recently took a Talmud class and there was some discussion that the Sanhedrin didn't really exist. Aspirational story of the rabbis. Are you familiar with this perspective? No, never heard of it. Frankly, never heard of it. As far as I know, like, whoever I ever heard on the subject, they agree that Sanhedrin actually existed up until approximately 400 AD, and that's it. And later there were a few attempts to renew Sanhedrin, which never happened, which is a very interesting story for itself. But I never heard somebody saying that it did not exist. But again, who knows? Okay, do you usually go from Tiberias to the coast? Well, I mean, if you want to walk the Sanhedrin Trail, so normally you walk to Tiberias because this is where it ends, you know, so that's the historical context. But you can also, like, if you want to follow the Sanhedrin Trail, so you normally walk from either Usha or Beit She'arim to Tiberias. But there is also a very, very popular, beautiful path, which is called from sea to sea, Yam le Yam. And the idea is to walk from the Mediterranean Sea to the Sea of Galilee, from the Mediterranean to the lake, to Kinneret. And then we walk along Nahal Gziv and Nahal Amud, and we ascend to Mount Meron. It's a beautiful hike, which takes between 3 to 4 days. And then you visit other sites. It's mostly natural hike. And then you can do it either from Mediterranean to the Sea of Galilee or other way around, whatever you prefer. I mean, I always walked it from the Sea of Galilee to Mediterranean, but it doesn't matter because it's just, you know, just an idea of sea to sea. Okay, that's it. We have no further questions. Amazing. Okay, if you do have anything you'd like to say, share, ask, add, please unmute yourself.
Well, great number.
Thank
Great
you.
number
Did you?
75. Thank you.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
another question, Julia.
We will be sending
Yeah,
the
I can see. I see. When did you start? Since the Sanhedrin disbanded, what took its place after the temple was destroyed? Well, again, the Sanhedrin existed up until 400 AD in Tiberias, and then it was disbanded, as you said. And then what happened was that we had different centers of rabbinical institutions, rabbinical authority, rabbis. Basically, we had the main center in Tiberias, and the other main center was in Babylon, in two towns. One is called Pumbedita, and the other one is called Sura. Okay, so we had a few authorities, and then we had a very important center in Fustat, which became Cairo, which was led by Maimonides, and then we had another center. So basically, after 400 AD, when Sanhedrin ceased to exist, we did not have one authority which was accepted by the entire Jewish world, but we rather had a few different, and then we had disagreements in between, and that's where it starts. Like, the Ashkenazi do this, the Sephardi do that, the Yemenite do this and this and that, but not this. Okay?
Julia,
That's exactly what
Julia?
happened. Yes, Barry. Hi.
Didn't the Sanhedrin have among Christians, wasn't there a very negative view of the Sanhedrin because of Jesus and the trial of Jesus?
Well, okay, yes and no. This is, okay, it is a complicated question, okay? So I will answer very briefly. On one hand, yes, of course, definitely so, because Sanhedrin was actually the institution which wanted to crucify Jesus, and therefore, okay, they should be blamed for Jesus' death. On the other hand, we read in the Gospels, in the New Testament, that Rabbi Gamliel, who was a leader of Sanhedrin at the time, he became a follower of Jesus. Okay, and some other, I'm not saying that this is true, okay, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying that this is what Christians read in the Bible, and therefore for them this is obviously true. So, and he became a secret follower of Jesus, and some other rabbis later became followers of Jesus, including a very famous rabbi. I think his name was Jochanan, and he's called the other. Okay, Ha'acher. He became another. So the Sanhedrin is a very bad, cruel, horrible institution. But in the same time, since some of the members of Sanhedrin became Christians, so they were good. So they were also the good side of Sanhedrin. Okay. Yeah, Elisha ben Abuya. Thank you. M. Wilderman. Exactly. Elisha ben Abuya. Yes, he is the one. Ha'acher, the other one. Right. Thank you. All right. Are we done? That's it.
I have a question not about this, but about future tours, and I guess
Sure. Yeah. I'm listening. Neely is listening as well.
Trying to jump into the tour the entire time, as you can see. I have to keep stopping her.
Yeah, I can see her. She doesn't look satisfied though. Something was wrong.
Oh, she is. She's like relaxed.
She is satisfied. There were no cats.
But this is like a relaxed thing.
Okay, good.
She's wondering. I don't know if there's
your other question.
Why I'm asking a question.
Well,
I'm not talking about Neely. Is there a
Ilana, go ahead.
Is there a lockdown right now in Israel, or is there?
No. Thank goodness. For now, we have no lockdown, and actually, this Sunday, schools are supposed to be back in business, which is pretty amazing because grades 7 to 10 were not in school for ages. Okay, months in a row. And Sunday they are supposed to be back in school, which is incredible. And restaurants are supposed to reopen, and cafes. And so if you're vaccinated, you can sit inside. If you're not vaccinated, you can sit outside.
So my question is, will we be doing the live tours again, where you're actually walking around outside?
Well, okay. To do the live, we need two things. One is no lockdown. The other one is daylight.
Right.
Right.
Got
So
it.
right now, no live because 6 p.m. is too early for you, and it's already dark here.
Got
So
it.
we have to wait another, I don't know, month and a half maybe.
I
So
was
no,
wondering
we will keep doing this like live, not on location. No.
It's wonderful. I was just hearing from getting the question from people, so I thought I would ask.
Yeah. No, I mean, now we are limited by daylight.
Got it. Pam, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to say again, like I mentioned the other day, if anyone, Barry, you were asking questions, if anyone wants a good book to read can you see it on there?
Yeah. As a driven leaf.
As a driven leaf. It's really, I mean, it's written, in a novel kind of way, but it gives you the background of the Sanhedrin and of all the people and everything. It's just a fascinating book. So, something good to read besides just a boring reference book.
And then you should come on a walk of Sanhedrin Trail.
Absolutely.
Okay, you are convinced. All right, that's great.
Oh, I'm definitely going to.
Right.
So, Barry, I pulled this for you, Barry. By Milton Steinberg.
Okay, guys, so just to mention, next week we drop down to 50 people, but yet, so I hope the others will just read it when they get the emails. Next week, we have a presentation about plants in Israel, actual Israeli plants and biblical plants. I keep showing you some anemones and almond trees and stuff like that, but next week you will be able to, learn more about this. And the speaker is Joanna, and she is indeed a specialist on both topics. So I'm sure you will enjoy and you will learn much. So this is the presentation for Tuesday. And then Thursday, we are going to one of my favorite locations, one of the most beautiful locations in Israel, and this is Engedi. Okay, so it's an amazing combination of nature, of antiquity, and modern kibbutz with botanical garden. So so you're most welcome. I really hope to see you all and even more people.
Thank you so much, Leah. And I just want to welcome all of our new guests and encourage you to stay for the Shmooze session afterwards. And if you have any questions about Volunteers for Israel, what we are, what we do, how you can get involved, just to talk to us about it, you can feel free to ask in the Shmooze session, or I'll put an email address in the chat in case you want to send me an email. But thank you, Julia. Amazing as always.
Thank you. Thank you, Lana. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody. I mean, I still have 45 names, so I will not read them all, but thank you so much.
Laila Tov, Julia.
Laila Tov. And I need to pay for gasoline for the next presentation. So please help me with it. It's a long drive to Engedi. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thank
you, Barry.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Next week.